Hey guys, Moshi Mochi here, and we're back with the Havencraft Stay Rebellion Take 2 Draft Infographic update. So Havencraft's the craft that suffers the most out of Dawnbreak Knighted rotating because it loses this basic Holy Line crystal package. You think stuff like the Holy Line crystal, Peace Weaver, and the Temple of the Holy Line. There's not enough Holy Line crystal generators to reliably play the line crystals in the early game and have one to cycle in the late game. That means you can't recycle the 5 play point crystals and just win the game off the infinite value or just eventual 4/4 storm lines. So Havencraft has to sort of fall back on its previous game plans to sort of win its games. So what are some of the ways you can go about this? You can play sort of a value-oriented game plan. There are actually some reasonably strong cards in the pool, stuff like your Zealots, your Forgotten Sanctuaries, Assault Priests, Unicorn Knights, Prism Swings, even new stuff like the Saintly Core. And it's always got that sort of anti-meta implication of just banishing your opponent's followers. It deals with problematic stuff like your Prime Artifacts, your Monica Moras, stuff like that a lot of value crafts like to play, and it now has like a really good anti board matchup because of the Zealot of Riposte. It's going to be very strong against board oriented crafts for a couple of expansions to come. Additionally, they can also play sort of a do-nothing control role. Usually it runs a lot of these cards, and then you just try to draft a win condition and just play these on a neutral board, and you should be able to win a game from there. Additionally, we have stuff like the Explosive Amulet board game plan now back in the pool with the cards something like the Featherfolk Gardener. It's like a Pinion Prince, the sort of body plus amulet discount on legs. This one's very cheap compared to something like a Garuda, so you can make some very good mid-game explosive tempo plays. Right now, unfortunately, we don't have something like a Godsteel's Banquet or a Beastcaller's Aria, but you can still do stuff with a Sealed Tome, Beastly Vow, the Falcons. Even if you're lucky, you can line it up with a Forgotten Sanctuary and try to overwhelm your opponent with one really big tempo push. Finally, you can go for something like chip damage approach. Just get a bunch of chip damage in the early game and try to win with Haven's reasonably strong late game reach potential options, stuff like the Sanctum Keepers and the Sister Falconer. Just try to snowball the board in the early game and just finish your opponent with reach. Unfortunately, they're not very good in the department of board flood. If the board's neutral, they don't have a lot of options to sort of make a really big split board and hope your opponent doesn't remove it. And if they don't, you can get your chip damage that way. So that's a fault in that department. But if you can get the chip damage sort of in the early game, in the mid game, just play a standard value game and get the chip damage where you can. You can definitely make good use of these tools and win the game that way. Most of the time, you'll end up playing sort of a mix of these styles. You'll adapt to whatever cards you have / draft, and then you'll just also adapt to sort of whatever matchups you're playing. And then Havencraft is in a reasonable place to sort of execute these sort of game plans. So moving on to the new cards, you may notice that the mini expansion cards are here as well. Templating wise and also early placement wise, it's sort of hard to set, but it'll update in the next expansion similar to the previous ones. I'll just go sort of in the natural order, starting with the Grimnir, because this is technically a neutral card. So the Grimnir. So 3 play point 2, 3 ward, you already play that sort of stat line here. It's the enhance that sort of pushes on top. Just the ability to AoE for 2, AoE for 3, whether you're going first or second. You should be able to exhaust all your evos by then, unless you're really up on the value game or you're playing really conservatively against your opponent. The fact that just going into the late game, this ends up being a very, very premium removal option. Just a body with just AoE on legs, just AoEing for 2, AoEing for 3, that's already worth 4 or 5 play points, alongside just a standard good body, the 2/3 ward. You'll be very happy to just draft it here. So next up, we got the Untrue God. So this card's a lot more interesting and constructed wise, maybe in some unlimited deck or something. It can pull something like a Moray, the Temple of the Holy Line as well. But there aren't really good like one play point sort of amulets in Havencraft's pool. So in case you roll like 3-1 or something, then you'd have to pull the one play point card, which most of the times you might not even draft the Sealed Tome. And sometimes like you won't even have like the 3 play point amulet. Right now it's only something like the Saintly Core, which you can sort of pull. And sometimes it's not even strong to pull like those cards. And the fact that you have an opportunity cost of drafting this, so it's 5 play point 3/3, very understated for what it costs. And sometimes it can also pull nothing if you just draft like a standard vanilla Havencraft deck. That makes it sort of a card you want to avoid. It might end up here, but most drafts it'll probably be around here, especially early in the draft where you might be avoiding / not drafting as many amulets. So the Zoe. So 3 play point 3/3, and it's a Heal Matters card that's not in an amulet, fortunately. Think stuff like the Elena's Prayer and the Tenko Shrine. While those cards might have been reasonably strong effects, they were unplayable mainly because they were just amulets that did nothing the turn they came down. At least for this one, you just get a 3 play point 3/3, which is very good stats, very similar to something like a Marlone. And the fact that this triggers its heal trigger on its own, You can evo this and it'll restore all allies. All allies doesn't matter as much because Haven isn't very good at keeping really big boards, but it can still heal 2 for face and then proc its effect that way. You can draw off just random stuff like the Curate or your Iron Knuckles generating repair modes and just keeping them in the hand. Maybe you can just draw 1, draw 2. It's only here because mainly sometimes it'll just be vanilla 3-3 on board. Sometimes going to the late game you don't have the evos or don't want to evo this, and you don't have sort of the heal effects to actually get 1 or 2 draws off this. That ends up being like semi-vanilla. Otherwise it's like a reasonably solid card to take. So the Father of Refinement, 7 play point 5/5 ward. It's very similar to a lot of cards Haven can draft. First off, it's got some competition in the 7-drop slot. You definitely want a Sanctum Keepers or 2 in your deck, and even something like a White Heart, which is a pseudo 7-drop. It does its job very similarly, just having sort of a pseudo damage bubble that's sort of similar to this one. This one just hits in and then heals after, while this one just takes nothing from hitting in, barring Banes for both of them, of course. Its playpoint cost is also sort of hurtful to it. A lot of the times the ward doesn't matter, and the fact that 7 playpoints means sometimes you're just pressured out turn 4, 5, and 6 by your opponent that you just have to burn all your evos, and this becomes relatively vanilla. Just having the repair mode in hand, even though it costs 0, if it doesn't land on this card, if you don't have the evos for this card, you just have the repair mode stuck in your hand. It's just a random 5/5 ward with some pseudo damage immune clause on it. While it is like reasonably strong, sometimes it can be vanilla, which is the reason why it's here. Next up, we got the Lamonia. This card was one of the first cards revealed in the Steel Rebellion expansion, if I recall correctly. People were excited / panicking that Aegis would be back in the pool for Havencraft, but fortunately, or unfortunately, if you play Haven a lot, it's not very consistent to actually get the Salvation X Lamonia to draw you the Heavenly Aegis. What this card does is it's a 0 play point spell that discounts a Havencraft / Machina card in your hand by 1, and it costs 0, so you can just play it in for free whenever you get it. And if you play 4 of them, you'll get the Aegis, but unfortunately, the way you get them is by having other Machina followers die. And you have to have the Machina followers die after you get the leader effect. And you get the leader effect through evolving this card, so you have to play this card down first. And sometimes you don't want to play it down on 4 because you want to save it for evoing it on 6 to get to the free 6 play point 6/5 rush. So getting it down, you have to have that sort of Mecha-Wing Angel draft, your Robo-Galvin draft, and maybe begrudgingly draft your Robofalcons. Fortunately, you can draft like a bunch of Iron Knuckle Nuns, but that might not be the best thing to draft as well. So you won't really play this card for sort of its effective draft of getting you the Aegis. But fortunately enough, it's strong enough as just a 6 play point enhanced card. 6 play point 6/5 rush is very strong, very similar to something like a Warbreaker Dragoon. And it even has sort of like a pseudo discount clause, very similar to that. Once it dies, you can discount something else and then just tempo your opponent out slightly a bit more after. And it's decent enough in the value game in that sense. And if in the off chance that it does happen, you can get like an Aegis off that and win the game in some really neutral games where this lines up and then you have like a bunch of random Machina followers that die after it. So the Purging Light, this is a very premium removal spell for Havencraft to get. For 1 more than something like an Acolyte's Light, you get to banish a bunch of an opponent's followers as long as their defense totals aren't even. You can usually manipulate it by just random followers you have on board. Just hit one in on something that's equal to each other, and then they'll obviously not be equal. And then you can just banish those 2. Very similar to like a Captivating Conductor, but the banish is much stronger than the Destroy. And the fact that this hits basically everything in the format. A lot of things in Take 2 are going to be post-evo followers and mid-range followers. A lot of big followers are sort of pushed away from the format, or just a lot of decks or a lot of drafts don't pick a ton of them. So most of the times you'll be able to clear 2 or 3 things from your opponent, and the fact that this hits only your opponent's followers is a big deal. Think something like a Themis Decree or a Themis Purge. You can actually play these in your sort of tempo-oriented decks that want to win the game off actually face damage or dealing damage to your opponent's face, while this one only hits your opponent's follower, so it's very strong in that regard as well. So definitely a very premium option. You'll be very happy to take it as a removal option in Havencraft. Last up, we got the Zsonia. So this card's very interesting. It's sort of like a Beauty and a Beast for Havencraft, which doesn't really fit its game plan. So it might end up here. Like, it's tentatively like around here. It'll end up like here, depending on whether you have like the value things or you just want sort of that big dumb follower. And like a big dumb follower is perfectly fine. Like, it's similar to like a Pain on 4, but it is very annoying to remove even in the mid game. Turns 4 and 5 after you crash this into something. The fact that it can't be targeted means your opponent can't finish it off with just random 3 damage, 2 play point cards, or just random evo pings or random stuff your opponent has that could remove this card while conserving an evo. So they might actually have to crash like a random 2-drop, random 3-drop into it, and that's very good in that regard. And then for 7, it's like 7 play point 7/7 with ward, so that's especially premium, and it gets to the free can't be destroyed clause on it. So a lot of things can't target it, a lot of things can't destroy it, and it's basically immune to a lot of things, barring something like a Saintly Core, which can actually banish it, funny enough. But you'll be reasonably happy to just pick it. I think it'll end up somewhere in between here. Time will tell. It's definitely a very solid card for Haven to take. As for the changelog, there's not much here. The segment stayed where it was. It was like sort of hovering here, but in the end, it's like too inconsistent. There's too much downside associated with it. Like you'd rather just draft the zealot over post most of the times. Like sometimes this can line up where this AOE is like a bunch of random tokens your opponent has, and it's like especially premium against sort of like the assembly droid spawner crafts. But again, the zealot of riposte is a lot more consistent, a lot less opportunity cost to actually play it down. A lot of things can go wrong by playing a sentiment, but you can definitely like play it, like draft it reasonably high. The Delafil is a lot better than it actually is placed. It's mainly just competition with the slots, as well as just Haven's inability to keep big wide boards and actually abuse this sort of heal multiple followers effect, where most of the time it just heals your face for a bit, and it's only good against those sort of like really aggressive crafts, which Havencraft already deals with very well. The Lapis moved up by 1, it might bump up another one as well. Obviously, because the Hoy lines are gone, you want sort of that definitive win condition card that you can actually just play down on a neutral board and just win the game, so you don't like just run the risk of just running out of value and just having your opponents play a bunch of unfair stuff and win the game from that. It's actually, ironically, stronger in aggressive decks than actual control decks, very similar to something like a Dragon Ranch or Canyon of the Dragon in Dragoncraft. You'd actually consider playing something like a 4-2 Sanctum Keeper on board and then playing a Lapis. That's much stronger than just a naked Lapis on the board, because if you just play the Lapis, if the opponent's snowballing you or sort of winning on board, they can just ignore it and go face. If you're playing an aggressive deck or you're being aggressive on board, the opponent has to deal with the Lapis as well as everything else that you have on board. So that's much stronger in that sense, but it's funny to think of it that way. But you'll definitely draft it in basically all your decks. As long as you have enough value in your deck, you'll be very happy to draft it. So nothing else left in the changelog in the terms of the golden legendaries, so we'll move on to the robofalcon. This card's sort of interesting since it's a Steel Rebellion boosted raids, but mainly it's just getting it off with an Iron Knuckle Nun. And then lining these two up, it's sort of inconsistent, as well as the payoff not being very high. All you get is sort of a 3-4 rush, or maybe you can like use the repair mode on itself and you get like a reasonable premium heal. But just the fact that this payoff is very low, and like the top end of Havencraft Silvers is reasonably strong, that you'd rather just draft these cards instead. Also, I think I've talked about this before, but the one attack stat line is the worst it can possibly be in Havencraft, because Havencraft has a problem with removing just random X1s on board. Because think about any other craft, they have stuff like puppets, pings, random stuff like ghosts, or even just spawn cards. A lot of crafts can make assembly droids or just soldiers, fairies, bats, something like that that can actually clear X1s on board or threaten X1s on board. Havencraft actually has to commit actual removal, actual cards to deal with X1s on board, compared to other crafts that can pseudo do it for free. So the opportunity cost as well of just playing a 2-play.13 isn't worth it, where you can just play like standard vanilla followers as well. So the mark code. This card actually can probably bump up. It's mainly just drafting it according to how good your neutrals are. If your neutrals are like super vanilla, you might not want to draft it. It's also like you can sort of use it as like a random value card that you throw away, and it's actually reasonably fine. You'll draft it higher according to the power level of your neutral cards, which is the main thing that sort of holds it back, because sometimes you might actually just want the vanilla 2-drop to draft instead, and you're definitely drafting these 4 as your sort of go-to silvers as your power cards. Last up for the silvers, we got the Saintly Core. This is probably the candidate for the best core, at least in Take-Two wise. It's actually extremely strong. The fact that you can play it on sort of the early and mid game, you can just evo a 2-drop or 3-drop alongside it, or just play it early, and it's sort of like a delayed heretical inquiry or something that actually targets the opponent's strongest follower. So the opponent, if they make a split board, they have to be scared of the zealot, and if they make sort of a mid-range wide board, then you can also just kill whatever the second biggest thing is, and also this will banish the biggest thing. It also ironically makes the Father Punishment a bit better as just a premium sort of 8-play point double combo play, which is partly the reason why this card's bumped up, as well as sort of the hair is also making you potentially want to play it as well. But yeah, this card's very strong. Just the fact that it's 7 play point side of it is actually one of the only ones where you can just drop it down on 7 and not care about your opponent actually like dropping something big, whereas other crafts, they can't really affordably play sort of the 7 play point side of the core and just do a do nothing evo play, because this thing will take care of whatever the strongest thing your opponent plays. So being very strong in the early game, very, very strong in the late game, this definitely makes it a very strong option for Havencraft to pick as one of its silver slots. So nothing much in the terms of the changelog for the silvers. Only the Father Punishment, which only got slightly better because of the Saintly Core or maybe the Lycian Hairs. Other than that, everything's around standard, the same thing. The Colette and the Disciple of Repose. This card's a lot better than it looks, and this card's a lot worse than it looks. That's all it is. This card's you're definitely not picking over the Inquisition, and this one you might justify picking the Marcode over it. Otherwise, this card's actually a very reasonable card for actually doing chip damage by playing it on board, regardless of when you play it. The fact that it just helps out that niche game style of Haven actually winning off its reach. So moving on to the Featherfolk Gardener. It's a 5.345, very similar to a couple cards that we've had in the pool and we have in the pool. First off, the Angelic Idol. It has that sort of Evo Amulet clause where if an amulet dies, it Evos for free. So even if you don't get a discount on something, or you discount something partially and this somehow stays alive, maybe like hiding behind a Sanctuary, you can get the Evo for free if the opponent can't clear it and the other Sanctuary, like the Sanctuary countdown, actually procs. But other than that, most of the time you're just trying to line this up with an actual amulet that you have on board. Fortunately, it lines up very well with something like a Divine Birdsong, or maybe playing a Temple Windbear / Beastly Vow on turn 4, and then you can just play this down and try to make an explosive board there. The only reason it's down here is mainly because it's competing with Forgotten Sanctuary, as well as the synergy of lining it up. Also, like the Pain, you can also line this up with that and get the premium ping with that. Mainly, it's just the competition with the slot. Sometimes you might not end up with the basic these sort of basic amulets, so you're only drafting the Pain and the Forgotten. And the Forgotten, like, you're already drafting, you'll draft this over this for sure, and you'll draft the second Forgotten Sanctuary over this as well, and you'll probably even want the third Forgotten Sanctuary over the Featherfolk as well. So it's again, competing slots. It's a very premium card. Like, if you can draft 3 of these and 2 of these, you'll be very happy with this card. But the Forgotten Sanctuary is definitely the much stronger card. It's not relying on synergy, where if this is the fallback to this is being a 5.35 vanilla, and that's definitely not something you want. The upside is definitely there, but it's also got its vanilla implications, where you'd rather have just the much stay for a stronger card in the Forgotten Sanctuary. Next up, we got the Iron Knuckle Nun. So 3.123 ward, stat line's already playable, similar to Grimnir already here. And it's got like some reasonable payoff, just giving you the repair mode. Maybe you can combo it for some healing synergy with something like Zoe, heal something else later. Or if you play this for like 4 anytime, you can just Evo, crash this in as a 4/5 body. If it lives, you just heal it for 3 after, and it becomes sort of like a suit over Camfall, or barring Banes, of course. And that's like reasonably premium. It's just like competition with other like cards in the pool. You'll play these alongside like other 3-drops, like these 2 are like your standard 3-drops. This is more of a 6-drop, and like all these cards are like sort of more important for Havencraft to take, in my opinion, barring like the White Heart, which I'll get to after, I guess. But you're very happy to sort of pick this up as just a standalone 3-drop. So the White Heart, this card's Havencraft's Evo Matters card. It's actually very interesting. If you play this in the early game, put it alongside something. If the opponent doesn't have the Evo ping or the removal to sort of clear this and clear the post-Evo follower, what'll happen is they'll probably clear the post-Evo follower, and then you can have the White Heart continually snowball and keep putting the Death Guard on whatever you Evo. And even if they clear the White Heart, if they can't clear the post-Evo follower, then you'll be able to maybe trade with that more efficiently on one of the opponent's drops, or maybe use removal on your opponent's cards and just use that post-Evo follower to snowball. So either way, it's sort of like a win-win situation. And it also has the bonus of being a very solid 6-drop, or 7-drop. 6/6 with the Death Guard onto itself. It's very annoying to remove, especially if the board's neutral. Just being a very solid late-game follower for Haven to draft. That's also a very solid mid-game Evo Matters card for Haven to draft. Makes it very solid. Comparatively to something like an Almirage, the only reason why this card's sort of higher is because this card can't do chip damage, and it doesn't matter as much having the Bane in the early game. While this card is Haven's sort of best control sort of card, this one is better in the terms of actually like trying to tempo your opponent out, try to actually do damage to your opponent's face in the early game, and try to win the game the standard way of just dealing enough damage to kill your opponent that way. So last up for the bronzes, we got the Fiery Pain. So 4 play.44, because it spawns the Holy Flame Tiger, the same thing you get from the Beastly Vow. And then you get the extra value of just having the last words to ping to later. Havencraft doesn't actually have 4-drops, so you'll definitely draft like real 4-drops in terms of actually playing it down and actually trying to push for board. So you'll definitely pick this up as many as you can, just being a vanilla 4-drop, above average 4-drop, with additional upside of just last words, giving you additional value, helping you clear board against your opponent, additional combo potential with something like Featherfolk Guardian. So you'll be happy to take as many of these up as you can, just to fill up the 4-drop curve with a very reasonable value buddy. So last up, we got the changelog. So the sealed tome, this is more of a preference thing, like how much you like the card, how much you don't like the card. I'm not too much of a fan of the card, mainly just because of the delay, like the inconsistency of it, of drawing it in the late game. But you can definitely like use it reasonably in the early game, as well as just weaving it in as a one play point sort of delayed cycle. So you can bump it here. Additionally, it has some sort of implications with like Featherfoot Gardener. If you draft it more, you value it higher. It's already like a reasonably solid card, like I said. It just depends on how much you draft sort of these cards in the pool. But as for the sealed tome, you can use it with the Forbidden Teachings. You play it down as the 2 play point Forbidden Teachings, and then you play the Featherfoot Gardener after. And what'll happen is the Teachings actually draws you the 2 cards during the current turn, and then the Teachings anti-follower effect will actually fade during the opponent's next turn. So you'll actually like skip out from the downside of actually drawing 2 cards. So that's like an interesting way to use it. You can always use it for the Sealed Tome as well as the Falcon as well. So that's actually a reasonably strong like combo potential with the Featherfoot Gardener. Like it's reasonable to sort of think about it, especially if your draft lines up that you end up with like 2 or 3 Gardeners, especially since they're boosted at the moment. As for the Almirage, I think I talked about it with the Heart. Basically just the chip potential option, just not being able to do damage in the early game is sort of why I'm putting it here. But you can definitely bump it up if you're playing like sort of a strictly control game. It's definitely solid enough in that regard. The Servant of Riposte, I've talked about it before. It's a similar thing to the robofalcon. It's a horrible 3-drop, but it's an amazing 6-drop. So if you treat it as just a 6-drop, you can definitely bump it higher, mainly because similar to 4-drops, Havencraft's missing on 6-drops. 6-drops aren't as important as sort of the early game, though, so just being a 3-play.14 can sometimes hurt it. But just treating it as strictly that sort of island whale for 6-drop, you'll definitely be very happy to just have one in your deck as just a reasonably pseudo-vanilla follower. Alright, I guess that wraps it up for the Havencraft cards, and I'll see you in the next one. Hey guys, Future Me here. And we got sort of a bonus, not exactly video, but it'll be sort of like a bonus preview, I guess, of the Open 6 helper that I'm going to make for all the crafts. Just really quickly, just going to skim over the Haven one. You can screenshot it, or I guess you can just look up the image or thing I'll post after. But yeah, pretty cool, and I'm sort of looking forward to talking about these cards in respect to Open 6/Sealed as well. And I guess I'll see you in the next one.